This is Energy of Business Moments with Michael Sipe, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant people on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they have learned on their road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their business success into your life and business. Energy of Business Moments is brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board and your host, Michael Sipe.
Welcome, everyone, to the Strategic Advisor Board Energy of Business Moments podcast. I am Michael Sipe, your host for the show today, and I have with me Nathan Rocklein of Squadron Nostalgia. He is the owner and as a former Navy pilot. Nathan, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Michael. My pleasure.
Yeah. So, Nathan, I've got one of your products right here on my bookshelf. It's S3 Viking, and I see your P3 back there behind you. It's a proud moment to be able to have something from our past that was really a huge part of our experience. So tell me about your company and a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, definitely. So the quick 30-second pitch is we produce models, so aircraft models, submarine models, ship models, memorial plaques, squadron plaques, stuff like that, for our customers, and it's themed in terms of historic. So our goal is to recreate these old paint schemes that really are long gone, but to give them life again, and hopefully give that life back to that recreation in a model, to then give it to a fellow vet. So majority of our customers are all veterans. The bulk of our business is around the aviation stuff, but we've been expanding into ships and other items. And the theme is still the same. It's that nostalgia thread of someone's past. And we'll do a lot of heirloom type pieces as well. So if you had a grandfather that flew in World War II, it's recreating that B-17 or any of these aircraft. And you know, I'm very passionate about history, so I look at why I started this business. I remember as a little kid, we would go to Fall River where my mom grew up, and there was the USS Massachusetts in Battleship Cove, and that was always my favorite thing as a kid. And I remember asking, like, wouldn't it be awesome if this battleship could start sailing again and, you know, become alive again, basically, reactivate? And somehow that's always been a theme, whether, you know, going to the Naval Academy, the rich history that was there, to actually when I started flight school, like this was really the inception of where the business started coming about. There was a long wait to start flight school, so they would stash the ensigns there, try to find ad hoc jobs for them to do, so they weren't just at the beach all day. And they stashed me at the Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola, where I was a tour guide. Yeah, and you know, I loved giving these tours. You know, I'd meet all these old aviators. But they had a display there to anyone who's been there called the QB.0 Club, where basically there's this beautiful memorabilia from QB Point, Philippines, when we used to have a base there. It closed in 92. And they brought all the squadron swag back, and again, you know, very beautiful hand carved wood memorabilia. And I remember like being like, can't really get this anymore. Like, what's going on? And you know, that really planted the idea in my head. And so anyway, I finished flight school, went off to VP5, flew P3s around the globe to a lot of different cool places, did some stuff over Iraq, some different places. But then I went back to Milton as a flight instructor. And the idea just really kept nagging at me of like, this feels like something I could pull off if I could just reach out to, you know, the people that made this stuff, you know, before, and see if I could get something going. And I ended up getting really lucky. My cousin, who was a C-17 pilot, happened to be flying from March Air Force Base over to former Clark Air Force Base, and had made contact with a very small mom and pop shop where they were still making some of these products. And when I shared my idea, and then he was like, well, wait a sec, I know someone. It really started it off, and I was like, no, I'm gonna reach out to them and you know, befriend them, and you know, try to grow it, and that was really the start of the partnership that I created, and from that point on, it was really, plenty of mistakes in my time. So this was 2007. But it was the inception of like, okay, well, we can do made to order model airplanes. We can recreate, and these are all like handcrafted mahogany, like, and there's a deep, rich history. So, I mean, anyone who is sort of a history buff, like, I mean, the U.S. Filipino history goes back a long ways, and
Sure
our
does.
two main bases were, Subic and Clark Air Force Base. This industry came alive really during Vietnam. So you'd have the aircraft carriers pulling into Subic en route to Vietnam, and that was the start of it, really. And so you'd have these squadrons who would pull in. They would have a deployment plaque made. They would have models made, and so it created these really artisan niche industries, both around both bases. And yeah, so my partner who I joined with, his grandfather, great uncle, who's now in his 90s, was one of those original artisans back in the 60s. So he trained my partner on how to craft and how to manufacture these things. And then, I've taken it over from this side of the pond. So yeah, we it was a great partnership. It's been a great partnership. And just to start seeing the business grow has been awesome. I mean, it's like we now have around 32 people over at the shop there. I mean, it literally started off with just a few people. So, and I feel like, in terms of wins, like, we went through COVID recently, right? And I was really worried. I was like, Jesus is going to crush my business. And I mean, the Philippines went down on full lockdown, so there were some tough times there. But it turned out to be a fantastic win from a business growth stuff, because like all the other shops basically closed down, and like our artisans were able to take their work home with them, and we actually brought on more people, and like we got better artisans. And it's always been this battle of like who can get the best artisan talent, in production of these things. Because again, I mean, it's like they're individually made. You don't have the ability to mass produce. Like you need that talent that can carve, paint, and recreate these pieces.
Yeah.
So sorry, I probably went a little long on that, but yeah, that was.
No, thank you for sharing that. And the talent in the Philippines, of course, is pretty. For people who aren't aware of it, there's quite a bit of talent there, and
There is.
And I love hearing about how you took an advantage of a sort of a crisis moment, turned it into an opportunity, and then continue to grow. It's a good news story, obviously. And you talk about some of the high points in your growth there, but one of the things I like to ask in the Energy Business Moments podcast here is, from a positive energy perspective, we have highs and lows in our business, but from a positive perspective, what are a couple that stand out to you that were really strong moments for you that made you feel like, wow, I am in the right business?
Yeah, I mean, so clearly going back to the very, very early bit, we started producing some models. There was a squadron crash, and the spouse reached out to me to recreate a model for the funeral. And that was a,
Wow.
So the full spectrum of like, wow, but very happy to do it. It was awesome. And, we support this organization called the Wingman Foundation currently. So anytime there's a crash, we'll produce a plaque, we'll do something for the family or the squadron. So they have a memorial. In more like happy news, like I find the connection to me, the biggest wins are like, I love doing the old timers. Like you get the occasional Korean War vet still. And ironically, like I really hadn't talked to a World War II vet in a long time now, as you would guess why. And I recently got this call like in December. I pick up the phone. He's like, "Hey, your web page is inaccurate with because I always put the squadron history underneath the model we do to try to save the history and how it gets described." And he's like, "No, I flew with this squadron." Well, it was a P-38 from World War II, and he was describing his experience in the Pacific theater. That I hadn't copied from the squadron webpage. To share that history. So, again, you're connecting to that past of what these people have done. And they're so rich with stories, and like that just drives me in a way of like, even if it's just, putting a couple notes, a picture of the person when they're flying that aircraft, that's huge. beyond like the personal sense, the Navy commissioned us to reproduce. So every time the Navy commissions a new ship, they commission a model. So it goes in there at the Carter Rock Naval Museum at Carter Rock, right outside of DC. So this was a big win for us, where we won the contract, and we produced like two 7.5-foot models of this new LPD ship coming out, and I was a little nervous of if we could actually do that. So it was one of those stretch goals of like, yeah, we can do it. And then carefully reviewing, at each phase as the artist completed it, it was like, that looks, looking at this like 3D, like high-tech engineering diagram of like, we got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was an awesome win, for some of our bigger clients. But yeah. So
well, that's cool. Thank you for sharing those. Those are both very interesting, and obviously the connection you make with people, especially the old timers. It's kind of like paying it back.
I 100%. And it's like, I know, like, I get such joy. Like I handle all the customer service of this business. I mean, I don't, it's me answering. It's me when someone calls me, like, or calls for a model, to me picking up the phone. Like, I love that connection of connecting with the people, because I just hear the greatest stories ever. I mean, like, I Korean War pilot, a number of years back, who crash landed in Korea. I mean, like, you just, aviators who flew off, Marble Mountain in Vietnam, like, just you hit these themes, and like anyone who has flown sort of has those, like, that was a bad day story, or,
right.
But it's like just seared into our memories of like, that was that moment in time. And, you put it into a model form, and it's so much more than just, a knickknack on a shelf. It's like, no, there's a story behind that. And that's what we try to tell. So
that is so true. And case in point with me, like, I've got on the side of the airplane, I've got the people I flew with, because they were, that was closest to this squadron buddies. And so having that on there, just, when I see it and I see their name, I think of them again, and it's just, it's a good reminder of a time when, it was sort of a brotherhood, sisterhood kind of thing, where we were all close. We're going through something challenging, like you talked about. And so having that ability to look back on that and cherish that moment is really a very powerful thing.
Oh, it's people's identity. I mean, aviators are pretty notorious for, I mean, they all have a certain type of persona. I mean, like, if you were to map out what an aviator persona is, I mean, very type A, very, like, you could figure it out, but they tend to be a lot of good fun, and, perfect person to be at a happy hour with, like, there are these themes that we all sort of carry with us. And, I think there's a lot of that, speaks to the story and people's past. So
yeah, it tells a story. Absolutely. So Nathan, if you could spend time with any person, deceased or living, who would that be?
So I have two answers here. So I know so the one isn't, so from a business sense, like, a really good tax accountant. I mean, these guys can be worth their weight in gold. Like, I mean, I feel like that has been a perpetual evolution in my business story of like no one can keep track of all the different grants, all the different, I mean, it's impossible. So if you have a tax accountant that can be like, hey, you need to check out this, or that qualifies, like, it's not many things. It's like, why wasn't I doing that 10 years ago? So anyway, so certainly a good tax accountant. In terms of famous people, historic past and present, like, I'm going to go with a Stoic. So I'm going to go with Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, the last of the good Roman emperors. So I'll go back, because you alluded to it earlier. Like, there is a certain stoicism that people in the military, certainly in aviation, have. We use, like, I mean, you were a flight instructor yourself. The no fast hands in the cockpit, right? That's a very Stoic statement when you think about it. It's like, control your emotions, be resolved, evaluate the situation, then make a decision. And I think that sort of, like, we're always driven by things that we only have so much control in the military on anything that we do. Certainly in an aircraft, that would hold true. And I think that stoicism plays strongly to sort of how I see many things in life, how I see it with business. And, certainly, I mean, no one could compare, like if you were just to talk about like Marcus Aurelius as a historical figure. I mean, Roman Empire at the height of its power. I mean, this was sort of, what he was able to do before you got to like, bad Roman emperors, as they would say. But so certainly, I mean, when I remember watching General Mattis, right? I mean, he would always talk about meditations as a key book that everyone should read. Again, highly recommend that same theme, because I think that's sort of that, how we control ourselves and how we conduct ourselves has a lot of meaning, and we can either be pulled, or we can actually, do the pulling. So, anyway, so.
Yeah, that's a great one with Marcus Aurelius, and the point about stoicism and being able to kind of be at peace in challenging situations is just, it's invaluable for people who find themselves in stressful situations. And so, yeah, finding somebody like that who clearly, as a Roman emperor, would have moments.
Right, exactly. So,
good. Well, Nathan, we're coming to the end here of the interview, and I love your business. It's fantastic. People might want to order an airplane. How could they go about doing that, or how can they reach out to you?
Well, yeah. So the website, www.squadronnostalgia.com, Facebook, Squadron Nostalgia. Just put it in your search engine. I've tried to do a lot of search engine optimization, so I should pop right up, hopefully. But yeah, and if you reach out, then it'll be me you'll be talking to, and we can certainly work out what aircraft you want, what model, and we've gotten to the point where we can almost do any aircraft. I mean, there's very little. I mean, the artisans are so talented. Like they're, we'll look at a beaten up black and white photograph and then still be able to turn that into a beautiful aircraft. And the internet just sort of keeps getting better with other reference material where we can sort of piece together what the story is. And certainly if it's the opportunity to capture one's family's history or whatever, like give us a photo and we'll put it on our website and help keep that legacy. So
yeah, great. All right. Well, thanks for being on the show today, Nathan. It's great to have you here, and look forward to seeing you out in the land.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to Energy of Business Moments with your host, Michael Sipe. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and we will see you on the next episode.